It was taken in 1882, somewhere in the American South. A black family, formal and dignified, wearing their best clothes, stands inside a photography studio. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. At first glance, it looks like many other portraits from that period. A moment captured in time, a family proud enough to pay to be remembered. But look a little closer. One member of the family, a young girl standing at the edge of the frame, has something in her eyes that nobody noticed for more than 140 years. Something that, when a genetic historian finally studied this photograph with digital magnification, made him fall completely silent. Because what he discovered was not just a simple physical feature. It was a key, a biological key hidden inside her DNA, a key that had survived slavery, survived being erased, survived many generations of silence, and was about to reveal the true origin of a whole family whose past had been intentionally destroyed. This is the story of what was hidden inside that little girl's eyes. And it may change the way you think about identity, ancestry, and what DNA can remember even when history forgets. Before we begin, if stories like this move you, and if you believe forgotten histories should be told, please subscribe to this channel and leave a like. It only takes 2 seconds, and it means a lot. Now let's go back to the year 1882. Dr. James Okafor had spent 15 years rebuilding lost family histories. His office at Howard University in Washington, D.C. was filled with framed photographs, not of his own family, but of strangers, people whose names had been erased and whose stories had been swallowed by time. Every photo on his wall represented a case he had solved, a life whose history had been found again. The morning Diane walked into his office, it was raining. She was in her early 50s, wearing a gray coat, and she carried a flat cardboard envelope, the way someone carries something valuable, pressed carefully against her chest with both arms, as if protecting it from the rain. "My grandmother gave it to me," she said as she gently placed it on his desk. "And her grandmother gave it to her. Nobody knows who these people are. We don't know their names, where they came from. Nothing." James opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a photograph about 8 by 10 inches, mounted on thick cardboard. It was a cabinet card, the common portrait style of the 1880s. The photo was in good shape. The edges were slightly brown and bent, but the image itself was clear. A family of 7 stood inside what looked like a photography studio. The background was painted to look like a garden, which was a common trick used by photographers at that time. The father stood in the center, tall and broad, wearing a dark suit and tie. His expression was calm and serious, the way many people looked in photos back then because they had to stay still during long exposure times. Next to him, a woman, likely the mother, sat in a wooden chair wearing a high-collared blouse. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. Around them were 5 children. 2 older boys stood on the left side. 2 younger girls sat on a small bench in front, and 1 girl, the youngest, about 7 or 8 years old, stood slightly apart at the far right edge of the photograph. At the bottom of the cardboard frame, written in faded ink, was a date, October 14th, 1882. There was no name, no location, and no photographer's stamp on the back. Only a faint rectangular mark where the stamp had once been scraped away. James studied the photograph quietly for a long moment. Then he reached for a magnifying glass. "Has anyone ever looked at this closely?" he asked. Diane shook her head. "Not really. We always believed it was just a simple portrait." "Not really. We always believed it was just a simple portrait." James slowly moved the magnifying glass across the photo the way he always did, carefully from left to right, then top to bottom, searching for clues like clothing styles, furniture, and the type of photo paper used. Small details like these often helped him date and locate old pictures. He noticed several things. The high collars on the boys' jackets suggested the early 1880s. The painted garden background matched photography studios in the American South during the Reconstruction period. The quality of the paper and mounting card suggested the work of a professional photographer. Whoever this family was, they had chosen a skilled studio to take their picture. Then the magnifying glass reached the youngest girl standing at the far right. Her face was turned slightly toward the camera, as if she had moved a little just before the photo was taken. Because of that small movement, both of her eyes were clearly visible, and they were not the same. Even in the sepia color of a 19th century photograph, the difference was noticeable. Her left eye looked dark, a deep brown typical for a black child of that time. But her right eye looked lighter, much lighter. While the left eye absorbed the light, the right eye reflected it differently, almost gray and pale. Even in black and white, James slowly put the magnifying glass down. Instead, he turned on a digital scanner. It took about 12 minutes to scan the photo in very high resolution and load it onto his computer screen. He opened the software he often used for old photographs, increasing contrast, adjusting brightness, and sharpening the details without changing the original image. When the enhanced picture appeared on the screen and he zoomed in on the girl's face, he leaned back in his chair and stayed silent for a long time. Her right eye was blue-gray, clearly blue-gray. A black child in 1882, one brown eye, one blue-gray eye. He slowly turned toward Diane, who was watching him carefully. "Tell me everything you know about this family," he said. Everything. Diane knew very little. That was the honest truth. The photograph had been passed down through 4 generations of women, grandmother to daughter, daughter to granddaughter, always with the same simple message. "Keep this. It matters." But no names had survived. No letters, no documents, no clear stories. "My great-great-grandmother got it from someone she called the old woman," Diane said. "That's all I know. The old woman gave it to her before she died and told her never to lose it." James nodded slowly while staring at the computer screen. Then he quickly opened a medical reference file he had saved years earlier. It was not something most genealogists used, but James had learned that genetics and history often tell the same story in different ways. Waardenburg syndrome, type 2A. He read carefully like a detective studying a case file. Waardenburg syndrome is a genetic condition that affects pigmentation in the hair, skin, and eyes. Common signs include different colored eyes, called heterochromia, or a white streak of hair near the front of the head. The condition comes from mutations in certain genes that affect pigment cells in the body. One line caught his attention: autosomal dominant. That meant the gene only needed one parent to pass it on, and about half of the children in each generation should show the trait. If the little girl in the 1882 photograph had this condition, she inherited it from one of her parents, and that parent inherited it from someone before them, forming a long chain through generations. James looked back at the girl's pale eye, glowing softly on the computer screen. "This child," he said carefully, "has a genetic condition called Waardenburg syndrome. It runs in family heirs. It doesn't usually skip generations." Diane leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means it didn't start with her." James spent the rest of the afternoon examining the photograph again, this time looking closely at the other faces. The 2 older boys showed nothing unusual. Their eyes looked dark and normal. The father's eyes also looked even and dark. The mother's face, however, was partly turned. One side was hidden in shadow, created by the studio lighting. Then James noticed something else. The second girl sitting on the bench, the one slightly older than the youngest, had something unusual in her hair. When he enhanced the image further, he saw a small patch of hair above her left temple that looked much lighter than the rest. Not gray from age, pure white. A white forelock. It was another classic sign of Waardenburg syndrome. James sat back quietly, 2 siblings showing 2 different signs of the same genetic condition. Both traits must have come from one parent. He picked up his phone and called his colleague, Dr. Patricia Yuen, a genetic specialist who had helped him with several ancestry cases before. "Patricia," he said, "I need you to look at a photograph from 1882. 2 children show signs of Waardenburg syndrome. One has heterochromia, the other a white forelock. and one parent's face is partly hidden in shadow. There was a pause on the line. "I'll be there at 8 tomorrow morning," Patricia said. When Patricia arrived the next day, she studied the enhanced photo carefully. After several minutes, she spoke quietly. "The shadow isn't hiding the eyes," she said. "It's hiding the hair." When James increased the contrast even more, a faint detail appeared at the mother's hairline, a thin strip of lighter hair in exactly the same place as the daughter's white forelock. "She's the carrier," Patricia said softly. "The mutation came from her." From there, the search moved into historical records. James checked the digital archives of the Freedmen's Bureau, which had recorded the lives of many formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Late that morning, one record appeared on his screen. A labor contract from South Carolina dated 1866. Next to one woman's name was a note written by an agent. "One eye brown, one eye gray-blue, distinctive." Her name was Eliza, and for the first time in 140 years, the family in the photograph finally had a name connected to them. From there, the trail continued through old slave ship manifests, where another entry from 1849 listed a young woman named Eliza with the simple description, "Eyes different." Years later, DNA testing confirmed the deeper truth. Diane's maternal DNA traced back to West Africa, specifically Sierra Leone, and to the Mende people who lived along the Sawa River. Somewhere along that river, many generations earlier, lived a woman whose eyes were different, one dark and one pale. That rare genetic trait traveled across the Atlantic, through slavery, through generations, and finally appeared again in the eyes of a small girl in an 1882 photograph. DNA never forgets. It waits quietly, sometimes for centuries, until someone finally learns how to read the story written inside it. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe.